What's up, everybody? Welcome to the AllSooners Podcast, episode 190. We're getting there, almost to 200. It's Wednesday, last day of May, and today's a little weird. We had to push things back a little bit again. It's about 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night, because today I was in Oklahoma City at the Women's College World Series. My man Ryan was there as well. My man Ross was there as well. My man Randall was up here in Tulsa, where I am, getting some recruiting stuff done. So we're all over the place. We're bringing you wall-to-wall coverage. Anyway, we're switching things up a little bit on today's show. Today, you're going to hear from all four of us. It's a magical type show here at AllSooners. Ryan Chapman joins us from the studio in Moore. I'm John Hoover. Obviously, I'm in Tulsa. Later on the show in segment 2, we're going to be joined by the new guy. That's Randall Sweet. He's really taken recruiting coverage by the horns. He was up here again in Tulsa today doing some recruiting coverage, interviewing some kids. He's going to tell you all about Champion Barbecue, official visits, latest offers, all that stuff. He's been running around the state getting interviews with Oklahoma's best prospects. Pretty soon he's going to be in the state of Texas. And then in the final segment, we got Ross Lovelace, formerly intern Ross. He's going to join us to talk about some kickoff times announced today, about some basketball transfers, about some baseball NCAA tournament. He's going to give us his 2 cents on that stuff. But first, as we should, we'll start with the important stuff, the big guns. We start, Ryan Chapman, with softball. Today was media day at Hall of Fame Stadium, and they kept us busy.
They kept us busy. We stayed busy. Look, guys, if you've been with us all year long, you've been with us the last 3 years, you know no one has the quality and the quantity of softball coverage that AllSooners.com brings you. And just today, I think between 12:40 p.m. is when the practice that was open to media started. From 12:40 p.m. to 6 p.m., between the press conferences, stories, all that stuff, we had 6 different pieces of softball content. They haven't even played games yet in Oklahoma City, Hoove. So if you're looking for that softball fix, you know where to go. AllSooners. That's where we're at.
That's right. Ryan's on top of it. You guys should have seen the number of people in the press box. Okay, Ryan's been covering this team wall to wall for two solid years, and he's known about it, covering OU softball longer than that. Okay, so you should have seen the number of people who came up to Ryan today in the press box. Ryan, I have a softball question for you. They would ask him a question about Stanford, or they would ask him a question about last year's game against Washington, or last week's game against Clemson, or they would ask him about the Oklahoma Sooners. Ryan, number one, OU did it. They lost to Baylor like 100 days ago now, and they haven't lost since. 48 in a row. That's a new all-time NCAA record. Eat your heart out, Bud Wilkinson. 48 straight for Patty Gasso. I want to show you something real quick. See if I can find it. It's up here on my bookshelf. It's back behind. I can't reach it. Anyway, I got Bud Wilkinson's the Bud Wilkinson story back there. It's called 47 Straight. Patty Gasso needs a book, Ryan. I'm going to nominate you to write it, and we're going to call it 48 Straight, or however long this winning streak lasts. Holy cow. How long can they do it, Ryan? They need to win 5 more. Can they do it? And when will they lose? 2024 is their next opportunity to lose if they go 5-0 in Oklahoma City. When are they going to lose next year?
Let's pump the brakes on 2024. Florida State.
It makes my guts right now for saying
Florida State, really, really good. Tennessee, really, really good. I won't be picking any of those teams to beat Oklahoma 2 times, but I would not be surprised to see. I know I keep saying this, and I feel like a crazy person because people reflect it back at me. And they're like, well, but 2 things are happening right now in college softball. A, Oklahoma's dynasty. B, the sport is as deep and it's as good as you've ever seen it. And you're going to see that on Thursday, a Stanford team, if you remember where they were opening weekend to where they are now, Patty Gasso talked about, we'll get into that later, totally different teams. But for right now, yeah, that comeback against Clemson was incredible, but we've had a whole media day to digest, and I think this thing's going to get to at least, let's do some math, it's going to get to at least 51, I think, before Oklahoma hits some turbulence. That would put them in the Women's College World Series Championship Series. because when you just go down the line, Oklahoma had 7 players named to the all-region team, 5 first team, 2 second teamers. All 5 of those first teamers, those are first team All-Americans, not just All-Americans, first team All-Americans. Oklahoma's going to roll out 5 of those. Nicole May, not able to be considered. She would have been on that list if she had got to the 100 innings mark. This team is too deep. We know that. We've talked about it, and you're going to see it this weekend. Tennessee is incredible. They've been riding Ashley Rogers, their pitcher, like crazy. She had 100-plus pitches both those games against Texas. Patty Gasso doesn't have to use 2 of the same pitchers in a whole series, and that's going to be the difference for Oklahoma. And you're going to see the power hitting and all that take off. Their numbers are bananas, and that's what's going to lead Oklahoma through this field in Oklahoma City.
Zeta Pooney has been leading Tennessee as well. Interesting. They got a couple of Oklahoma transfers over the last few years. So that'll be fun to watch. You got the Gasso link in Utah. That'll be fun to watch. But Ryan, I'm with you, man. I don't know who could possibly, if you got an all-star team of the other 7 teams in Oklahoma City and picked the best of the best and said, we're going to put you guys together and you're going to play Oklahoma, I still think Oklahoma would win. And here's why, Ryan. Okay, let's get the nuts and bolts out of the way. Women's College World Series starts tomorrow. Game 1 is 1:30?
Yes, 1:30 p.m. Central for the Sooners and the Cardinal.
So we got to watch. Here's the deal. In our jobs, we get to cover a lot of games. We don't get to cover a lot of practices. Practices are not always open, okay? And we certainly don't get to stand there for 30 minutes, 45 minutes like we did today in the rain. It was cool. Watching every element of practice. Ryan, I came away from that practice today probably more impressed with Oklahoma than I would have coming out of last week's games or watching them win the national championship. It is, and you and I sat in the press box and watched some other teams practice. It's on another level. When they practice, every pitch, every fungo, every warm-up, every throw, everything that they do is timed out, rehearsed, perfected, repeated. It's unbelievable. And they were hitting the ball to the outfield, right? Right fielder gets it. Coach pitches another one. Left fielder gets it. Here comes the ball coming in from the right fielder on a hop, on a skip, on a one hop to the catcher, and the catcher's right in front of the plate, lays down the phantom tag, right? That was going on all over the field. It was a symphony of softball all happening at once. And the infielders were getting in on it. Infielders were supposed to go to first base, and then they're supposed to come home, and then they're supposed to go to second base. And everybody, Ryan, here's the thing, was laser focused on nobody was goofing off. Nobody was cutting up. Nobody was back talking. Nobody was complaining. For that 1 hour, everybody was laser focused. And I looked at that and I said, Oklahoma's not losing.
Well, and that's what happens when you assemble the luxury, the talent that Patty Gasso has, when you can go and say, hey, whether it's Sophia Nugent or Alina Torres or Jocelyn Erickson, anyone, if you mess up in practice in right field, good luck getting onto the field. Like, you better hope it's a run rule situation where Patty Gasso's feeling like pinch hitting, stuff like that, because otherwise you're not going to get on the field. And Alyssa Brito at third base, unanimous All-American, laying out, diving left, right, center, making these plays. Grace Lyons, Gold Glove shortstop. We've seen it week in, week out. We get that at practice. It's the exact same thing. Yep. And I get the sense that Patty Gasso is intentionally like, how can I hit this thing as hard and as hugging that line as possible? If it's in foul territory, it's practice. You better make that play. And here's the wild thing, Hoove. I know that they work on base running more than probably anything else, like even more than defense, as far as Patty Gasso, her card, her set plays, those situations. Hey, when everyone's like, why is Shayna Coleman off third base? It's a close call back to third base. Well, she's drawing the attention so that Tiara Jennings can swipe second behind her, because Oklahoma knows those extra bases, that matters. That's why I always say, watch the base running if you're there, the amount of extra bases Oklahoma takes, because everyone's so worried about the lead runner. They didn't even get to go through that because the rain nixed it. They sure as heck weren't going to go through any actual pitching or batting practice on the big field where everybody could see it. We didn't even get to see them really dive into the nitty-gritty. That was just the defense, and that's why the Sooners are poised to be the first team in the history of the sport to finish number one team batting average, number one team ERA, number one fielding percentage, because that's what Patty Gasso demands.
Yeah, it's never happened before because it's almost impossible. And watching them attack that defense today lets you know why. I mean, I've been skeptical. There's been times, they've got great players, right? Grace Lyons, best shortstop I've ever seen it playing the game. They've got great players. They make amazing plays. Jada Coleman out there pulling balls back from the wall. That's not it. They do have great players. They also have some players who are struggling to get on the field who, when they do defensive practice, look like freaking all-stars because they're so laser-focused. They're so guided missile into exactly what they're doing, what's being asked of them. They're chasing the ball down in the corner, turns around. Quincy Lilio, who barely plays in the outfield, she made that catch, was an NCAA tournament. I think it was Big 12, was it? Anyway. She's out there, and I saw her skip a ball in today from deep in the corner, one hop in the glove, right in front of the plate. Like, why is she not playing more? Well, it's because everybody else is so damn good. It's unbelievable how good this team is. So enough about that. I wanted to just express how smitten I was with what I saw at practice today. It was impressive. This is a rematch, Ryan. OU Stanford is a rematch. What was the score of the first game? 12-1?
10-1. It was a Haley Lee sixth inning walk-off for the walk-off run rule.
10-1.
Yeah.
Anything to glean from that? Patty didn't seem to think so today at the press conference.
Yeah, Patty didn't think so because Patty Gasso say that she said this last year, and this is how I know she means it. Last year, that UCLA game where Jordy Ball just lit the Bruins up, that was like her immediate post-game reaction was, neither of these teams was ready for a game like of this caliber. This is not a World Series game. You're going to see two different teams at the World Series. And that was two of the final four teams left last year. Patty Gasso, very similar today. It was game 2 for Stanford, game 3 for Oklahoma. And Patty Gasso basically was just like, no, but neither of these teams was ready. Neither of those teams is ready to play that caliber of game literally the first week. And they're just trying to figure each other out. So not a whole lot to do as far as taking away from that. And one step further, for Oklahoma, they didn't see the two top pitchers for Stanford. Of Stanford's 5 pitchers, the 3 that they saw did not end up being the Cardinals' top 2 pitchers. So it's not like Oklahoma at least got to have 8 batters see Kennedy and see what that's going to look like. So for Patty Gasso, it's basically just a whole new thing, but it's a weird quirk of this first day of the World Series, John. Every single game is a rematch of a regular season series, except for Oklahoma and Stanford, which is just a rematch of one game opening weekend.
Yeah, that is interesting. We could talk about pitching, Ryan. Let's start with Stanford's projected starter. How do you say her first name? Najari?
Yeah.
Najari Kennedy. She got a chance to be like, I think you mentioned in a note, Odyssey Alexander of James Madison this year. She got a chance to be that superstar that gives OU a little bit of problem.
Yeah, she's got a chance. And frankly, John, that's what she's going to have to do. When you look at Stanford's lineup, the thing that's gotten Oklahoma in trouble against Baylor, Govan turned what should have been just a double into a 3-run home run that put the Bears up 4-1. And then Clemson, when they had OU on the ropes, what was it? Home run balls over and over. The Cardinals don't have that. They've hit 24 home runs as a team all year long. Oklahoma's hit 112 to 24. So they don't have that. So Candy's going to have to be elite. And she comes into the World Series with the best ERA in all of college softball, 0.48. So she's allowing essentially half an earned run per 7 innings. If you're kind of new to that, that's what they're going to have to bring to the table. And that was the formula that James Madison had. It was a pitcher that Oklahoma hadn't seen. But here's the difference, and here's what'll be interesting. Odyssey Alexander was a veteran. She may not have been known to the mainstream college softball world, but she was in her final year, a veteran pitcher Katie's a true freshman coming from Topeka. She's never seen an atmosphere like this, but she also doesn't have 4 years of college softball to lean on to say, hey, I may not have pitched in this atmosphere, but I can lock in. It's just softball. So how she handles both the Oklahoma lineup, but the raucous environment that we know it's going to be, a lot of crimson and cream and not Stanford maroon, that's going to be kind of the key to the early going of this, because if Stanford can't put runs on the board early and Oklahoma can dial in, that's when the crowd really gets into it. You see the momentum start rolling. That's when things usually get ugly for OU's opponents.
Cardinal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Stanford Cardinal, colored Cardinal. I believe that's right.
So that's what I was going with, or hoping at least. It's one between all the crimson and maroons we have in college sports, I get lost in the sauce.
Yeah, for sure. Alabama's here too. So what do we know? It helps being colorblind, Ryan. I can just say I'm colorblind. I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't have to argue with anybody. And yet my wife is like, "What do you think of these two colors?" I'm like. So what does OU do? What does Jen Rocha do? Jen Rocha, the OU pitching coach, got a lot of flowers today from Patty Gasso and from Alex Storako at the press conference. We've seen that before. I want to say it was Hope Troutwine at this setting last year or 2 years ago. No, it was last year, where she said she didn't know what she didn't know about pitching until she started pitching for Jen Rocha. So what is her plan? Do you think? First of all, if you were her, what would you do? I know what I would do. I would go with the hot hand and the best pitcher on in the circle for OU. The back half of the season has been Jordy Ball. 4 earned runs allowed in her last 16 appearances, Jordy Ball. So I would go with Jordy. There's a little bit of flexibility there, though, with the team that doesn't use the long ball, is not offensively explosive like Stanford is. Maybe you can run some other pitchers out there. Storako gave up 2 home runs last week. Nicole May has given up some stuff lately, but I'd hate to not go with Jordy Ball and then say, dang, I wish I would have went with Jordy Ball. You know what I mean? But I think there's some flexibility, and there's certainly some talent throughout this lineup, throughout this pitching lineup that Oklahoma brings.
Yeah, the first thing, I'd be stunned if she rolls out Kirsten Deal. Deal only has had a handful of starts. That seems totally out of character. So yeah, you're looking at the 3-headed monster. I would not consider Storako, and it has nothing to do with her last 2 outings. She had a couple of runs against Cal, had the disastrous, not even an inning against Clemson. But she's the one that pitched 5 2/3 innings against Stanford earlier this year. Deal came in for the last strike. So I wouldn't pitch Storako just because why would you give Stanford someone that they've seen before? Even if it was long ago, it just doesn't make a ton of sense. So you'd be picking between May and Ball if you follow my path. And people, based off the Twitter replies that I get, do not believe this. So just trust me when I say, outside of a matchup against UCLA, which has happened twice, Nicole May has been elite at the Women's College World Series. Yeah. She was the one that held Texas in check last year. She has been dynamite. I would throw Nicole May against Stanford. She is more than capable of mowing through that Stanford lineup, and have Jordy Ball as fresh as possible for a potential Tennessee or Alabama matchup. Well, the Tennessee or Alabama matchup will happen either way. Oklahoma hopes it happens on Saturday in the winner's bracket. I would go May, then Ball. If May gets into trouble, you always have the option to come straight back to Jordy Ball. And if you win, you get the day off. So if Jordy Ball has to pitch 2 or 3 innings in relief, or if Jordy Ball has to close out the 7th inning, if it gets that far or whatever, then you're not going to be as concerned about her stacking those days because she'll have a day off if Oklahoma's offense handles business. So I'd go with May, let Jordy Ball take care of whatever happens Saturday, and then I'd throw Jordy Ball again on Monday.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I completely agree with that. I was thinking that same thing driving home from Oklahoma City today. Nicole May has the College World Series experience. She's got more experience in this setting, in the stadium, than anybody else. Ball pitched some last year in, minor situations coming off that arm injury. She wasn't asked to do very much as a pitcher. Not that she can't. I think she is their best pitcher. But I think it's a natural fit to have, again, someone who has given up home runs to a team that doesn't hit a lot of home runs. Perfect fit. Nicole May, I would start him. What do you think Jen Rocha does? You think is she gonna ride ball all the way?
Yeah, I think it'll be May. I do, because it's an interesting. We were talking with Clay Horney. That was one of the people that we were talking with. And he mentioned, there's the Paige Parker. Everyone's heard the story. Patty doesn't want to run someone to the ground. Well, if you win, you play every other day till the Champ Series. So you could roll the same pitcher out, not run him into the ground. I don't think Patty wants to do that still. And so I think you go with May. Then if you win, which Oklahoma should still roll with Nicole May. You have Jordy Ball for that winner's bracket game on Saturday. You win that, then you've got 2 games on Monday to play with, which we saw last year where UCLA won game 1, Oklahoma came straight back. And then you can do whatever you want, whether you go straight back to Jordy Ball, Storako May, whatever that looks like. Nicole May has been here. She's done that. And again, outside of the bad matchup against UCLA, she's been outstanding at the Women's College World Series.
I like, just to further this point, Storako is a rise ball pitcher. Nicole May is a drop ball pitcher. What does that say? What you're doing with the lineups? Does one lineup, say Stanford or somebody in the second round, Alabama or whoever, do they thrive on? And OU, the OU coaching staff has all this data. Do they go with the rise ball pitcher against a drop ball staff or lineup? I mean, do they go with the drop ball pitcher against a rise ball lineup? Who knows? Like I said, they've got all that information, and then you got Jordy Ball, who basically can throw any one of those pitches. So, no, that's a fun breakdown. It'll be anything else stand out to you about this, Ryan, about this matchup, or about the rest of the field, or the way the tournament is kind of structured now?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting because there's a lot of options on the table for everyone sitting at home trying to remember and go, wait. At some point, brackets flip, sifting through all that. Here's the easy way to remember it. The 4-team pod, Oklahoma, Stanford, Alabama, Tennessee, you're going to stay in that bracket. The only team that flips is the team that wins game 1 and then loses game 2. So does that make sense? That the only way Oklahoma sees the other half of the bracket is if they beat Stanford and then lose to either Alabama or Tennessee. On the flip side, the only way that one of those teams comes over. So basically, Oklahoma State and Florida State, one of those teams is going to lose right off the jump. Oklahoma will not be able to see that team until the Champ Series or if they get flipped over. So the scenario in which Oklahoma State or Florida State wins and then loses to either Washington or Utah, I would say is slim. So I wouldn't worry about an Oklahoma State semifinal, a Bedlam semifinal, a Florida State semifinal. You're probably just going to see them in the Champ Series. And so what you're looking at, the really fun thing is either way, in game 2, Oklahoma gets Alabama and Montana Fouts and her injured trying to will her way back to the Champ Series or to a Champ Series, or a Tennessee team that has Zeta Pooney, has Kiki Malloy, who Kiki Malloy might be the most exciting hitter in the country this year. She has 25 home runs. Unreal. But also Mackenzie Donahue. Remember her? Mackenzie Donahue took the World Series by storm in 2021. Some off-the-field stuff in 2022 leads to a transfer.
We could say.
Yeah. And so I think that everyone would be very interested in what an Oklahoma-Tennessee matchup would be, however it could get there. If you have Zeta Pooney and Donahue, plus the Malloy factor, plus the Ashley Rogers factor. That's what I'm rooting for. Whether that means that they both got to lose day 1 or win day 1, doesn't matter. We can get there either way.
Yeah, same. I'm rooting for that. I'm rooting for a Tennessee semifinal matchup. That would be fun. Ryan, appreciate it. We'll cut you loose and bring in my man Randall because we got next segment, a ton of recruiting news. So, Ryan, thanks.
Of course. And like we said, we'll have all the content. Hoove's galleries are unreal. If you just want to go back through and relive some of the stuff that's going on, that's the spot to be. AllSooners.com. No, we write some stuff too.
It's pretty easy. I just hold the button down and just kind of move it around the field, and then I pick the best 40 or 50 photos that came out of it.
Call it a day.
Yeah, being a photographer is super easy. Hey, we got, like I said, a ton of recruiting news coming up. My man Randall's been all over it for a couple of weeks now. That's all coming up next on the AllSooners Podcast. Little social media for you. On Twitter, You can give us a follow at all_Sooners. I'm at John E. Hoover. Ryan's at _Ryan Chapman. You can follow Ross at Ross Lovelace. And Randall is at Randall Sweet 5, the number 5. Follow him for all the latest recruiting news, which we're going to get into in just a second. The website, of course, is AllSooners.com. We're a Fan Nation affiliate, part of the Sports Illustrated Network. Remember, All Sooners is all free. No memberships, no signups, no usernames, no emails, no passwords, no credit cards needed. Just get on there and look at our stuff. It's all free. All right, Randall, welcome to the All Sooners Pod, your debut, my man, speaking of recruiting. How's things going for you, your first full week as a member of the All Sooners crew?
Yeah, it's been great. Everyone's been super welcoming and helped me get on board quickly and get acclimated. I've had a great time so far.
You've done great work so far, for sure, and there's going to be a lot more of that coming. Randall Sweet is our newest hire. He's our recruiting analyst. He's got like 5 different titles, I think. Superstar in the waiting. Just trust me on that, people. Randall, I'm going to embarrass you a little bit here. Tell us about yourself. I think you grew up in Texas. You played high school football in Lubbock. You graduated last year, 2022, from OU. Tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, so like you said, I went to high school out in Lubbock, Texas. I moved around a lot, spent some time in Houston and Dallas, but finished and went to high school in Lubbock. I went to OU for 4 years and graduated, like you said, last year in 2022. And I've been covering the Thunder and doing some other stuff ever since then. And I'm excited now to be on this side of things.
Your grandparents were OU fans? Are OU fans, I should say?
Yeah. My grandparents are big OU fans. And my mom's an OU fan as well.
Okay. I thought there was some Texas blood in there somewhere that you get to have bragging rights either your way or thrown in your face every year.
Yeah. My cousin's a big UT fan. They're down in the Port Arthur area. Surprisingly, a lot of UT fans down there.
Yeah, well, why not? Hey, okay, let's talk recruiting. One of the reasons I hired you, Randall, is because you have a passion for recruiting. You've got a talent for it and a love for it. Recruiting is not easy to cover. I tried over the years. I'm not very good at it. I don't have a passion for it. Why does it kind of motivate you like it does?
Yeah, I remember, being in high school football, and, I remember every week, at the beginning of the week, learning about the scouting report of the opposing team, kind of like checking out who their best players were to kind of figure out how to attack that. And something about that always fascinated me. And to this day, breaking down, getting kind of into the weeds of high school football and seeing who all the top guys are, seeing kind of the next generation of college stars. That's really interesting to me, and catching them before they get on the big stage.
Yeah, that's a cool part of it, is getting to know them before they become superstars and NIL darlings and all that other stuff that's happening nowadays.
Absolutely.
Okay, Randall, coming off of Zadavian Sims's disappointment last week, you were there for that when he announced that he was going to Oregon and not Oklahoma. Is OU ever going to sign anybody again, or does Brent Venables going to lose his job in the summer because they literally can't sign anybody? I'm kidding, of course I'm kidding, but give OU fans a little reason, maybe some reason somewhere, that they can feel a little better going into June.
Yeah, so, about Zadavian Sims, I did talk to him, and he said that it wasn't anything wrong with OU. I do think it's important to point out that he's not from Oklahoma originally. He lives here now, but he didn't grow up here. So the tradition of OU, that's not something that might be as instilled in him as it is someone who grew up, learning about the Sooners and saw them through all the prime years. But moving forward, I think that OU's in a great place. We've seen a lot of defensive recruits recently announce that they'll be taking visits to Norman, big-name defensive recruits like David Stone, Williams Maneri, and today Kobe Black. All 3 of those are 5-star defenders who have announced official visits to Oklahoma. Stone, I believe, will be there over the Champion Barbecue, which is June 16th to 18th. Williams Maneri and Kobe Black will both be in town on June 9th. So those are big-time targets for Oklahoma. Those would be big-time guys to land. And I went to Westmore last week to check out their spring game. I talked to Michael Patterson McDonald, I would say that OU is in a really good place with him right now. He said that he wants to commit sometime next fall in the first 5 games, and that he would also be visiting Norman, visiting OU in the fall. I know that Brent Venables really likes to get that last visit in there to really stick in a kid's mind. He also told me that he grew up in Norman, that the OU offer really meant a lot to him. His dad told me that he played for OU. He walked on there. And so he was also wearing a pair of OU gloves at the spring game. So all those things combined, I think that that really looks optimistic for OU. I think if they can nail that visit in the fall, then they'll be in a really good place with the Westmore safety there.
Outstanding. What about Tristan Haynes? He's a C4 guy. Are they off C4 guys, or are they going to continue to recruit? I know Kevin Sperry's not in that discussion. I know he's a quarterback, 2025. But what about Tristan Haynes and guys like that he works out with and plays 7-on-7 with?
Yeah, so when I talked to Tristan at the C4 Pro Day, he told me that he actually hadn't heard from OU since he went down there for the spring game. So even before the whole Zadavian Sims, whatever that situation was, the coaches seem to have kind of been backing off of him. It's kind of interesting. He's been blowing up recently. Bama came through and gave him an offer. Texas A&M recently gave him an offer. So he could very well end up in the Sooners' future conference. But it does seem like OU is a little off of him now. His teammates, however, are what's really interesting to me. Xavier Robinson, Trinae Washington, and recently Marcus James. All 3 of them are also OU offers. And from what I understand, the Sooners are really pulling hard for those guys. You and I have talked. Trinae Washington, he's got the body of a big-time playmaker at the next level. And Xavier Robinson, it looks like he could be hopeful to Oklahoma or Iowa State right now from everything that I've seen and heard.
You were in Tulsa today. We switched places. I was in Oklahoma City. You were in Tulsa. Now we're flipped back. Tell us about your trip up here. You went to Bixby?
Yeah, loaded with talent as usual. The Spartans, Union, Midwest City, East St. Louis were all out there today. I caught up with Devin Jordan, corner for Union, OU offer, and he had some really interesting things to say. Both him and Michael Patterson, when I asked about kind of their playing styles and some of their strong points of their games, both of them mentioned their leadership abilities, which I think is really interesting. 2 defensive back recruits that Venables is looking at that really have coveted their leadership abilities. Kind of shows me that that's something that the coaching staff really looks for in these defensive recruits. And other than that, I asked him about what it meant to get an OU offer. He told me that it being a school right in his backyard, it meant a lot to him. He also let me in on Venables and Coach Jay Valai doing some really exclusive things, trying to make him feel special, feel like he really was an important recruit to them. And so for OU, it seems like they're in a good place with him as well. He was also wearing a pair of OU gloves at the team camp today, which always seems to be a good sign, but you never really know. I heard that he was wearing TCU gloves the other day. Who knows about that? He told me that he would be at Oklahoma State the weekend before the Champ U barbecue, which he will be at in Norman. So the 2 in-state schools will be getting visits in the next month from him. But one thing that was really interesting, when I asked him about Alabama offering him, he said that he doesn't chase the logo on the helmet. And so I thought that was really interesting, kind of saying that he's not going to be enamored with this school just because it's a big name, big time program. He said that he's got great relationships kind of all over the place. And so I thought that was really interesting. He also said that he loves that Brent Venables is a defensive minded head coach. So I think that that's something else that Sooner fans can be happy about.
Yeah, I think in his first two recruiting classes, it's pretty clear that Brent is recruiting a different style, a different level of talent on the defensive side of the football. People want to play for him. People who play defense want to play for him. So there's no doubt. What about Easton Baker, linebacker out of Utah?
Yeah, so it seems like everything's kind of come together really quickly with Baker. So he decommitted from BYU back at the beginning of May. Local kid from Utah. And since then, he's picked up some offers, OU being one. They offered him last week. And since he picked up that OU offer, he scheduled a visit out to the Champ U barbecue. And he's also said that he will be committing on July 1st. So OU will have a visit a few weeks before that. I don't think they're the last visit on his list, but from what I've seen, they're the highest profile program that he's received an offer from and will visit. He kind of reminds me of one of those hybrid linebacker defensive backs, maybe a little undersized as a linebacker, fast, hard-hitting, can fly around the field and really knock guys' heads around. Just a football player. And I think that him setting up that visit and setting up a commitment date and a visit so quickly after being offered by OU, in addition to them being the caliber of school that they are compared to his other offers, really bodes well for the Sooners.
Yeah, that's got to be good signs all around. Someone who's not coming to Champ U Barbecue, as you said at the top, was Williams Nwaneri. June 9th is going to be his visit. What do you think about that? He's basically one of the really jewels of this class, one of the crown jewels of what would be this recruiting class. You don't bring him in when you're trying literally to put your best foot forward for all the recruits and you're trying to get all this peer recruiting going on. You're trying to get other guys in and say, Williams, Nwaneri, Will, come to OU. He's not going to get that because he's not going to be part of that full-blown, top-down, all gas, no brakes, for lack of a better word, recruiting efforts that they do on Champ U Barbecue. He's coming in the week before, but he's going to get a little more face time maybe with the coaches, a little more individual session, a little more tender loving care, for lack of a better word. He's going to get more individual attention than he would at a big event like that.
Yeah, it is interesting because I do think initially he was scheduled to come to the Champ U Barbecue, and that's now swapped with a visit to Tennessee. After he visited Texas A&M, he said that A&M was up there on the same level as OU and Tennessee. So that is interesting and at least noteworthy to me. But if I was an OU fan, I wouldn't worry too much about it. They are still getting a visit from him. There's still a lot of time. And, if you impress on the visit, I think that the Brent Venables track record is a lot better than Josh Heupel's. No offense to the former Sooner. But also, Nwaneri's coach played at OU. His high school coach played at OU under Bob Stoops. And so that might go a long way for the Sooners as well. And it's right now he's by all the recruiting services out there projected to be an OU lean, and that hasn't changed even with this visit date swap. So I wouldn't be too worried yet. I would wait till all the chips fall after the visits and see what he has to say then.
Yeah, Jamar Mosee, former running back for the Sooners. Didn't play defense, didn't play for Venables, but there's no doubt he knew Venables and got to know him as a coach and all that stuff. And he's known him through recruiting and so on and so forth. So that connection is there. Kobe Black is interesting. Do you have any more intel on Kobe Black, the 5-star defensive backs coming in to Norman on June 9th?
Yeah, he will also be taking visits to Texas and Ohio State, I know. So that's obviously tough competition. Ohio State, one of the best programs in the country, and you know how Texas recruits, especially with in-state kids. But the fact that OU's getting a visit, that shows that they're right in the mix. Jay Valai, again, showing that he's a great recruiter. Him and Brandon Hall helped get a 5-star defensive back into Norman last year. And, the fact that they're even in the race for that in 2 straight years is something that we haven't really seen in Norman for a while. And it really just shows, like you said earlier, how the defensive recruiting's taken off recently. It seems like right now Texas is his favorite. That's what the recruiting sites are projecting. And, if you go through, his social media, it's a lot of posts about Texas, and it seems like that's what he's favoriting right now. But, this official visit is a good chance for OU to say, hey, here's why you should reconsider that. And he has been to Norman twice already. So if he's coming up a third time, there's obviously something he likes. And he's not a Dallas kid. He's from Waco Connolly. It's a little farther. It's not right up I-35 like Dallas. It's not as easy for him to get to. So all that means something, I think.
Yeah, and taking your visit on the same weekend as Will Nwaneri, probably a good thing.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. You wrote a story today about 3 transfer portal guys that could be on their way to Norman. Tell us about that. Interesting information in here.
Yeah, it was very interesting. So DeJohn Terry was in town yesterday. He's a transfer defensive lineman from Tennessee. Before Tennessee, he played at Kansas. He'll be entering his 5th year in college in 2023. His stats aren't eye-popping, but he is huge. 6'4", 320 pounds, just a monster in the middle of the defense. So you have to think that, defensive line, the Sooners lost some guys there. It'd be nice to get a guy who can eat space and, take up some blocks in the middle there. He started out at Kansas, but he's gotten some major offers since entering the portal. I know that some other Power 5 schools other than OU have been looking at him, some other SEC schools. Today they brought in Josh Wallace, a defensive back from Massachusetts. He's a 4-year starter. He was a captain for 2 years, which kind of goes back to that leadership thing that, the defensive staff really is high on, especially in their defensive backs. He's made a lot of plays on the ball. I think he has almost 20 pass breakups in the past 2 seasons, which is pretty impressive. And so another position that the Sooners lost guys at in the offseason, it'd be nice to get some depth in those 2 rooms. And then apparently today they also hosted Philip Paya. I hope I'm saying his last name correctly.
I think that's right, Paya, yep.
He's originally played at Michigan and then transferred from Michigan to Utah State. He's another interior defensive lineman, big man, space eater type guy. Similar role as Terry, and could be a nice depth piece for the Sooners in a spot that they really need it after they lost some guys to the portal, to the draft, just in general.
3 defensive guys want to come play for Brent Venables. Imagine that. These are grad transfers?
Yes, all 5th year guys. Well, actually, 2 5th years, and then Terry and Wallace are both 5th years, and Paya is going to be a 6th year. So
yeah, they're grad transfers, meaning they're you can enter the portal at any time and you're immediately eligible.
Right, and they're veteran guys, which say what you will, it does help in this era of college football to have veteran players.
Yeah. Yeah, especially given the news that with some of the health concerns that Oklahoma's might be undergoing right now with one of their transfer defensive linemen. Can't say too much more about it till we hear something more official from one of the coaches, probably Brent Venables in that situation. But we'll see. Hopefully that's not a long-term deal. Hopefully that player is able to come back and play at some point in 2023. I'll have to leave that there. Can't say anything more about it right now. But, Randall, I want to give you a chance to talk about your, as we get ready for segment 3, your new kind of feature. You're going to be you're going to do a couple of things a week. You're rounding up the offers, you're rounding up the visits, you're rounding up all the recruiting news in one place.
Yeah. So every week I'll be kind of talking about the past week, who OU's offered, who's going to be coming in to visit the next month, things like that, just to kind of keep tabs on all the guys that the Sooners have their eyes on and that they're keeping tabs on, and just really trying to streamline all that recruiting coverage to the OU fans. Tomorrow I'll be in Westmore to check out their team camp. I know that I'll hopefully get to talk to Michael Patterson McDonald again, see him play, and then get some live action of him versus some good competition. And Deer Creek, some other good schools will be out there.
Yeah, look forward to that as well. And you can always find that, the roundups and the news, the commits, the visits, the offers, all that stuff at allsooners.com. As I said before, it's free. Just check it out. Randall's all over it, and he is a traveling man. He'll be in Texas soon enough, doing some 7-on-7 work down there, working with those guys too. Randall, you did great. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Especially jumping on this late at night. It's 11:30 here where I am.
Yep.
We're burning the midnight oil.
We are. That's the life of a sports writer, isn't it?
Yep, it is. We'll cut you loose. Appreciate it as always. We'll bring in Ross next. Ross Lovelace is going to finish up. We're going to talk about some OU baseball, some basketball news, and of course some big news in football today. We'll tell you all about it next on the AllSooners Podcast. Final segment of the AllSooners Podcast. We really appreciate it if you guys could just drop us a rating. The 5 stars help. If you like the podcast, go ahead. 5 stars. It's up to you. You have the power. It's in your hands. Like us, share us on social media. That's always helpful. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like, rate, subscribe, leave us a comment. We love that stuff. Okay, segment 3. My man Ross, I told you he was on his way in. Ross Lovelace joins us for the final segment. Ross has had a busy week since graduating college last week, right? Congratulations, first of all.
Yes, of course. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yes, busy week, of course.
This is going to tell you how shallow I am. I always tell my wife and kids, sorry, but the happiest day of my life was the day that I didn't have to go to school no more. College graduation.
Yes.
The birth of my children was so stressful. Both children were C-section, so that was so stressful. And then the whole getting married thing, man, was a perfect day, but God, it was stressful. I couldn't remember my vows.
I'm dealing with that too right now.
What you're planning a wedding, bro.
Yeah, the stress of the wedding was it's way higher than the stress of any college. I hate any college assignment paper, you name it. The stress of the wedding outnumbers that by a million right
college,
now.
Happiest day of my life. Nothing but smiles, nothing but joy. Those other days was like, oh God, what's gonna happen?
Exactly. I'm glad that I can just focus on, work without thinking about homework that's due the next day. That is the nicest feeling ever.
More tests to cram for. You still dream about taking tests?
Exactly. Oh, I don't think I crammed for many tests. The journalism school is all papers, which great for me. I'm not a great test taker.
I still wake up. I've been out of school 30 years. I still wake up thinking, oh God, I forgot to go to that class.
Yeah, I forgot to turn it in. Forgot, that's the worst feeling of all time. I'm glad that that's over for the most part.
You'll dream about it from time to time. I spent an entire semester forgetting that I went to a class. Oh no, now today's the final and I never went to class. It's the worst dream ever.
That's how I had a class this semester that was completely online, no due dates. It was all just due at the end of the semester. And I totally forgot about it until about 2 weeks until graduation.
That was my nightmare.
And that was my life for 2 weeks. So
Ross was busy last week. He covered the Big 12 baseball tournament for us remotely. Thank goodness. OU goes 1-2 in Arlington down there at Globe Life Field. Beat the Cowboys in the first one and then lost to Texas Tech, lost to Oklahoma State in the rematch. Ross, OU somehow got into the NCAA tournament. Good RPI, good strength of schedule. They're on their way back to Virginia for the 5th time since 2010. They got to go play an NCAA tournament game in Virginia. They're going to play East Carolina, 6 p.m. Friday, ESPN 2, I believe. Virginia and Army are the other teams at the Charlottesville Regional. They play earlier in the day on Friday at 11 a.m. But tell us about last week in Arlington, and it was just more of the same. It was more of 2 steps forward, 2 steps back.
Yeah, when they knocked off OSU, I thought we made a big mistake not going down to Arlington in case the Sooners made some noise. But after that, it was pretty clear that was the right decision. Being at the games in Norman, that series against OSU, it really just kind of felt like the win, on night 2 was lucky. And that's kind of, again, how I felt in Arlington, that win over Oklahoma State. Obviously, they did some good things, some great hits, some great plays in the field, but it just felt a little bit lucky. And then Texas Tech was an absolute disaster. That was one of the biggest, they just crumbled. And that was kind of the game. Honestly, I personally didn't think they were going to get in, especially after some of those wins. Tulane knocks off East Carolina. Just a few of those upset wins where I'm like, okay, they're definitely not getting in now. All these seed stealers, these bid stealers. And that was kind of the game that you point to where it's like they had a clear shot to win against Texas Tech, drop a gift of a fly ball, second base. I mean, he could have caught it without his glove on, bare hands, just let it fall right into his lap. Somehow doesn't hang on. They get out of that inning, giving up 5 runs when that would have been the 3rd out, and that's likely the game. And so just too many of those errors in the field, and then too many, Kendall Pettis made some great plays in the field, but then he gets on the bats and he grounds into, 2 or 3 double plays, and it's just an absolute killer for all the momentum, all of that kind of stuff. And, my initial reaction was they're going to get killed by East Carolina. That is what I thought first, just seeing East Carolina this season, just how they've played. But East Carolina is beatable. We have to remember they did lose to Tulane, who was, they were hot, but they were 18-40 on the year. Not a great baseball team. So, at the same time, baseball is a weird sport. Anyone can win. And, I really like how Braden Carmichael's been throwing the ball.
He gives him a chance, puncher's chance.
He gives him a fighting chance out there. And when the bats get hot, they get hot. That's just how OU is. They have some really talented hitters. And the story of the season has been struggles in the bullpen and pitching struggles all season long. So it's really just, if they can contain the Pirates, and give themselves a chance to get out of the region. We know what happened last year. And no one expected them to win last year too. They were, not quite as heavy as an underdog as this, but they were one of the last teams in last year. So, I think everyone is really interested to see how they play in Charlottesville, except for Kansas State fans. I don't think they will be watching much OU baseball for the remainder of the season. They were not happy. If you check any social media, I don't know if you saw the Pete Hughes statement that he put out, but he was not thrilled that the Sooners stole that spot.
Well, that's a good way of putting it. They stole the bid.
And they did, and it's honestly a little bit confusing. K-State had a better conference record. They swept OU, but at the same time, they took into account, OU didn't have two of their best players when they were playing K-State, and when they lost a few of those series. And the RPI, the NCAA made it very clear, the teams that play the best schedules are going to get rewarded. And OU had a very tough schedule, and they came away with a pretty decent record, especially going chunks of the season, missing a few key players. So it makes sense. It does make sense.
We're on the verge. We're on the slippery slope of descending into a debate about what good the RPI does if you don't beat those teams. It's the same thing that got Oklahoma left out of the NCAA basketball tournament. They had a lot of good games. They had a tough schedule, man. They played a lot of good teams, and they lost a bunch of them. And they didn't go to the NCAA tournament for that very reason. Oklahoma 31-26 on the season. Yeah, that's a tough one when you compare apples to apples. Got swept at by Kansas State. Had a lesser conference record, a lesser overall record, but their strength of schedule was so much better, and their RPI was so much better. So we're not going to debate that here. But Pete Hughes. Hey, OU fans are not feeling sorry for Pete Hughes not making the NCAA tournament.
Nope.
All right.
That is for sure, and you could see that for yourselves in the comment section. It was not a friendly place to be in either spot, K-State or Oklahoma.
Right. Let's talk basketball. You've got some insight for us on basketball. Sooners have officially added now Jalen Moore, Georgia Tech forward. I looked at his numbers, Ross. Something like what was it, eight points and 6 rebounds a game. For a team that went 13-18 last year out of Georgia Tech. I mean,
started about 15 games.
Is he going to be a big addition to this team?
He'll be a decent addition. I think he'll be solid depth. One thing I've noticed just as a trend that OU's brought in through the portal is length on the perimeter, down low. I was just going through the numbers today. And I think that this is one of the, on paper at least, one of the most talented OU basketball rosters they've had in a long time. Just recruiting wise, out of high school, they have 13 players, so probably looking to fill 1 or 2 more spots. They have 6 former 4-stars that were all top 150 prospects. 5 of those 6 top 100 prospects, and a good number of Caden Cooper. Number 40 or number 59 chose OU over Kansas, Alabama, Gonzaga, some really great names. And then obviously you get Uzan back. He was the number 66 player in the country. I think that the biggest key addition for them was John Hugley from Pittsburgh. They really did not have much inside depth last year. Got bullied around on the glass. The biggest example of that was against Oklahoma State. I mean, those games were horrible to watch. Oklahoma State bullied that team on the glass. And, Hugley adds he's 6'9", 240. He's not going to get moved out of the paint by a lot of people. And so you add him, you add the Utah Valley transfer, great shooter. He's a career 38% 3-point shooter, taking 6 threes a game, 90% free throw shooter. He can clearly shoot the rock. And then another player I'm really looking forward to watching next year, Luke Northweather. We didn't get to see him this last year. He was a redshirt, and he was the Missouri Gatorade Player of the Year, averaged 29 and 11 in high school. So even if that's not, like a 6A level, I think it was 3A, 4A. That's still really impressive to be, Gatorade Player of the Year, average almost 30 a game, and just lead your team in 2 major categories. So I really like what Porter's done through the portal. And, last year, who knows what would have happened if he hadn't gotten spurned by, Gibson and Harkless on the day before the portal closed. That team last year looks a lot different with those 2 players on it. And so I think he did a great job of replenishing the roster. He clearly was targeting defense and length through the portal, shored up a few big needs with shooting and a big man down low. And then there's room to add one more. And I think that, we saw this week that Cam Spencer, he's listed the Sooners in his top 4, and he's a career, he averaged 14 a game for Rutgers last year and shot 44% from 3. Absolute flamethrower. So, I mean, you add him into the equation, you have a lot of experience. You added a ton of guys with starting experience. Even guys like Soares from Oregon. He started, a good amount of games. Obviously Hugley started a ton of games for Pittsburgh over the years. Jalen Moore, the guy that we were just talking about from Georgia Tech, 15 starts. And then we haven't even mentioned Javion McCollum, who could very well be the most talented player on the team next year. The guard from Siena. And I do a lot of Thunder stuff too. So I see a bunch of NBA draft talk. And I love to dive into that kind of stuff. He's a legit NBA prospect. People are excited about him at the next level in the league. There's not a lot of times that you see a rising sophomore that's averaged 16 a game on, very efficient shooting splits. That just doesn't happen. And so I think that the Sooners are in a good spot on the basketball court, on paper at least.
Football-wise, interesting news today, Ross. OU, Big 12, I should say. Big 12 and their TV network partners released some kickoff times. What? Last day of May is when we start getting kickoff times, and we got a bunch of them. We got a third of the season announced today. September 2nd against Arkansas State, 11 a.m. That one's on ESPN. September 9th against SMU, 5 p.m. kickoff in Norman. That's ESPN Plus. Yeah. The following week, they go up to Tulsa, September 16th, a 2:30 p.m. kickoff. That one's either ESPN or ESPN2. Haven't decided yet. Probably won't until 11 days before. And then this is weird to me. Black Friday, coming off the road trip to BYU, 11 a.m. kickoff, Black Friday. Home game, TCU. That one's on Fox, November 24th.
That one is obviously the weirdest game on the schedule.
That's telling OU right there. You got one more Big 12 game, OU, and we're going to stick you with one more 11 a.m. kickoff.
That's what that was my initial reaction to, and I don't even have to see the rest of the schedule to tell you that is the strangest game on the schedule. It's the strangest game in the last 5-10 years for OU. They don't really play Friday games, and to throw a Friday game at 11 a.m. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But like you said, that seems like a Big 12 scheduling thing. One last parting gift for the Sooners. Here you go, and enjoy your trip out. And you saw Oklahoma State put out their 4-game teaser, and all of them were night games under the lights. I'm sure the fans will be happy about those. Maybe not the maybe not the media crew, but the fans, those night games will probably be rowdy for the Pokes, and the Sooners got all the early ones. And that's kind of just become tradition for OU at this point.
I don't know what to make of that. I'm trying to picture what that's going to look like for Oklahoma. You're coming off a pretty good road trip out there to Provo, and you come home and finish your conference November 24th with a home game against not the defending champ, but the defending college football playoff national championship game contender, right? I mean,
yeah.
TCU is the trendy pick again this year to repeat or to at least challenge. I know K-State won it, but you said I'm getting at. It's just kind of the whole thing just seems odd.
It's a little bit sketchy. I don't really know. Obviously TCU loses a good portion of that. Max Duggan and Quentin Johnson. Yeah, just a lot of talent back there. But they're never like a slouch for OU to play, and especially on the road, especially like you said, coming off that BYU game, it's not an easy game for OU, and also to have to get up at 11 a.m. on Friday. It's not really a football day. Like, you got to get up for those games. Yeah, exactly. You got to get up for those games. It's a weird game all around. It's definitely trap game potential for OU if it wasn't before. I will say it's probably a little bit easier playing TCU at 11 a.m. on Friday than it would be playing TCU at 7 p.m. on Friday in the middle of a blackout with a huge crowd and that kind of thing. The 11 a.m. games they're tough for both teams to get up for, especially on Friday.
TCU's got to travel up from Fort Worth day after Thanksgiving. They're going to have all that turkey on their stomachs, right? So, yeah, exactly. I don't know. I wouldn't worry about it too much, other than the fact that it's a short week. It's a morning game. That whole thing. They'll be fine. I'm looking forward to seeing how full the TU press box gets. TU's got a tiny little press box.
I've never seen it. That would be a fun one to go to.
It's bigger than it used to be, and they used to have the slowest elevator in the history of elevators, but they got that part fixed. It's a nice press box. It's a great little cozy little press box. I just don't know how they're going to get the OU media contention in there. We like to bring 3 people to a game. I don't know if we're going to be able to do that at Tulsa. I don't know. We'll have to see.
OU media brings an army pretty much anywhere. I mean, even at the softball media today, we were 20 deep down there. I mean, there are a lot.
11 a.m.
Lots of coverage.
Arkansas State season opener. That's totally expected, right? Nothing. Yeah.
Totally expected. That'll be a hot one too.
Warm. SMU, 5 p.m. I don't know what to make of that. Is that the ESPN Plus game? So that's the previous, we called it the pay-per-view game. It's just a weird kickoff time. 5 p.m. I don't know if OU's ever kicked off at 5 p.m. before.
I don't know either. That'd be something to look into. ESPN Plus, I feel like they're not really battling for time slots, so it's kind of strange that game is slotted at 5. Like, I feel like ESPN Plus can kind of just do what they want with their times. And so like I'm looking at Oklahoma State's schedule. The 9:30 kick with Arizona State is weird for us, but it's 7:30 or whatever time they're a few hours before Oklahoma time. SMU and OU, there's no time discrepancy there. We're both kicking off at 5 p.m. It doesn't really make any sense for either party for that game to be at 5 p.m. I understand it a little bit more if it's on, ESPN2, ESPN, ABC, Fox, whatever. ESPN Plus, that doesn't make much sense. That's what I'm thinking.
There's going to be some good games. I haven't looked at the schedule, the national schedule, but there's going to be some good games, obviously, that day, second Saturday in September. Putting it at 5 o'clock maybe maximizes that window, gets them some exposure that kind of in between games, like, oh, that one's a blowout. Let's see who else is playing. Oh, look, it's Oklahoma and SMU. Let's flip it over to that one.
Kind of stagger it a little bit.
Instead of going up head-to-head 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, you put it at 5 and you get a few more eyeballs. Kind of makes sense. It's just odd.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Real quick, you took on the two position spring review stories last week. You did the safeties and you did wide receivers. After coming to all the practices and coming to all the media interviews and stuff like that, you go back and review how, what everybody said and how they performed in the spring game and things like that. What was said about the players, and what'd you come away with at those two positions, safety and wide receiver?
Yeah. So for safety, obviously, I think that's a very deep position for the Sooners. I think that they're pretty confident in that room. And I don't think that's something that they've been able to say for, the past 5-10 years. It's been slim pickings. And one quote that really stood out from the spring from Brent Venables, he mentioned Key Lawrence, Reggie Pearson, Peyton Bowen, and Billy Bowman. And then right after he mentions those guys, he says, those guys at safety give us a lot more of what a defensive secondary should look like. That says a lot. And so, he was playing last season with probably some players that weren't his guys, weren't guys that, he would choose to have on the field, but it was kind of out of necessity. And no disrespect to those guys. They obviously played hard over their years at OU, but like he said, I mean, bringing in Reggie Pearson from Texas Tech was huge. And obviously Peyton Bowen could be the most talented player in the room as a freshman, but just having that veteran presence with Reggie Pearson, if anybody's struggling, I think that'll really help shore things up. I also think that it's just massive to have some accountability in the room. Just someone that I feel like even when, maybe Key Lawrence takes a bad angle last year, Justin Broyles misses a few plays, there was no accountability because there's no one else to put in. Like, you can't put anyone else in, so you just have to let these players figure it out. Yes, exactly. So you just have to keep letting these players figure it out. And I think now, I think it's a healthy sense of, you're kind of looking over your shoulder, and not in a way of, oh, I'm never going to play again. Oh, I messed up once, I'm done. But it's a sense of, it's a team effort now. It's a group that can make up for each other's flaws and that can have each other's back. I think that's one of the biggest things in the safety room. And I also think that's a really important position in Brent Venables' defense. Yeah. You saw games that absolutely spiraled, like Texas and like TCU, and dudes are just running wide open down the field. And I think a lot, obviously it's a team effort, but I think a lot of that is in the safety room. There's no back line of defense.
Yeah, and what about the wideouts? No Marvin Mims this year, but they've got some talented players who've not really done a whole lot in their careers.
Yeah, the wideouts, they're in a really interesting spot because you like the depth in the room, you like who they have, but they haven't been able to prove themselves. A lot of guys that have been waiting for an opportunity, and a new wide receiver coach too with Emmett Jones. So it's kind of a whole new look for OU, and I feel like, especially going from, CeeDee Lamb to Marvin Mims, even before that, you have D.D. Westbrook, you have Marquise Brown. It's just kind of like, who's gonna pick up the torch when it's passed next. And this season, I mean, obviously Jaleel Farouk is expected to assume that role, but there's nobody that's, set in stone for that role. And I feel like the past few seasons, there's been somebody to pick up that torch every single year. And we're kind of, who's going to separate themselves this year. Obviously, I love what Farouk brings to the table, and Drake Stoops as well. Emmett Jones mentioned, he'd go to a dark alley with Drake Stoops in Dallas. I thought that was a pretty funny quote. But obviously Dylan Gabriel's super comfortable with Drake Stoops. One thing that I felt was pretty interesting, and it could just be them trying to get more depth, but it also could be them feeling a little bit less confident in that room as a whole as they go out and go full court press for Brennan Thompson. Obviously a very talented wide receiver, but if you're completely sure about your room and confident in your guys, I don't know if that's a move that you go all in on. So that was interesting to me. I know they're super excited to have someone like him, and it gives them a lot of depth, but it makes me wonder kind of about everyone else. One guy I'm really excited to see is Gavin Freeman in more of a, obviously he's on scholarship this year. I don't think people realize one, how hard it is to get minutes as a walk-on at OU, much less a freshman at OU. Both of those things are extremely difficult, and Gavin Freeman did both. And it wasn't just like courtesy minutes. He came in against Oklahoma State, makes a huge catch. Obviously, he takes it to the house on his first touch. I mean, he's a very talented player, and he's kind of feeling that talent this year. He's feeling a lot more confident. And then, obviously every wide receiver mentioned Andrell Anthony from Michigan just as an absolute burner. Everyone mentions his speed, and I think that with Gabriel, obviously he loves to throw that deep ball. Either side, he loves to just launch it up and let his guys run under it. And I think Anthony can be one guy that really benefits from that.
First play of the spring game, right? First play of the spring game.
Exactly. First play of the spring.
Yeah, not only Brennan Thompson, but they went hard after Jordan Tyson from Colorado, a guy who doesn't have a big long resume of accomplishments, and they're like, you know what, we need more receivers. So I think the coaches, I think we're all on the same page that this group has not accomplished much, and there's some ability there, there's some potential there, but just in terms of what they have experience-wise, the coaching staff wants more, and that's what this offseason and the spring and the post-spring and the recruiting and the transfer portal have taught us, is that the Oklahoma coaching staff wants more. Ross, you did a good job, man. Appreciate you sitting in, especially this podcast got going around 10 o'clock late at night. Appreciate you jumping on like this.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. I always love hopping on and talking sports.
We'll do it again. And I want to thank you guys for listening. We'll be back next week on the AllSooners Podcast. You can catch that one and all of our shows on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, wherever you get your podcasts, we're there. If you have an Amazon-enabled device, just say, Alexa, play the AllSooners Podcast. That's simple. It's also posted on our website, allsooners.com. Just click on the player and listen on your phone, your tablet, or your computer. And, of course, all our shows are posted on my YouTube channel, John Hoover Media. For Ryan Chapman, for Ross Lovelace, and for Randall Sweet, I'm John Hoover. See you guys.